Hi, Mike. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm really glad to be on.
Yeah, man. And like I mentioned earlier, thank you so very much for honoring the invite. It means a whole lot. Thank you so very much, Mike.
Mm,
Okay, Mike. You see,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I'm quite excited to have you on the show for a couple of reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking, because I believe in order to transition from a chaotic situation to that of a beautiful one, it takes the application of knowledge, quality information. Sorry. And you see, Mike, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew meaning means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation here today very important to me and even to the audience. The second reason why I'm excited to have Mike on the show is for the sake of the audience now, because I believe there are some things that Mike knows that some of my audience needs to hear you say these stuffs, directly from your mouth in order for them to experience transformation. I firmly believe that. And lastly, that is me again.
Mm,
I am convinced that I'm definitely going to learn one or two things from Mike's story, insight, and experiences. So for that reason, Mike, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your journey, how you got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Mike, over to you.
I love it. Yeah, at a high level, I run a company that builds and manages apartments, and we're really focused on driving down the cost of housing. We've been achieving about a 20 to 30% reduction in those costs. And we believe that someday we can achieve a 50% reduction. But imagine what that means. It means someday your rent or your mortgage payment could be half. And see, my journey is that my parents started this business. It was really small when I was growing up. In fact, we lost everything growing up. And my dad was actually kidnapped in Peru. Crazy side story. But out of that, we just fought through it and we started building up this small company. And then I went off to college. And when I did that, the one thing that I knew is that I wanted nothing to do with this family business. And the reason that was, and I really struggled through this time, was because I didn't want people to think it was given to me. But what I realized deep down is that I wanted to make some kind of meaningful, positive impact in the world. And I realized if I could take this small business and grow that to a much larger scale to have that kind of impact, I could do that in a way that was way more impactful than I could if I just went on strictly on my own. So I joined in with the family business, very small at the time. But my dad and I doubled the size of the company the first 4 years of working together. It was great. It was a lot of fun. But then one day, my dad suddenly passed away. It was totally unexpected. One day he
So
was there,
sorry,
the
man.
next day, the next day he wasn't. And overnight I became CEO and I wrestled with that. In fact, I didn't even take the title of CEO for the first few years because I didn't feel like I had earned it yet. But since then, we have grown a lot and we're fighting to work to make that kind of impact.
Beautiful. And so sorry about your dad. And you see, you mentioned
Mm,
a very important word, which is impact, that you want to have
yeah.
impact on the world. And that's so good, I tell you, because having such mindset of having great impact, you know, powerful influence on the people to help them, solve one problem or another is actually one of the signs to discover a good leader and a good person. Not many people has the motive of wanting to impact the world. I read one article at one time like that about a company and I discovered that the motive behind what they're doing is basically profit. nothing more. So getting to
Mm.
listen to someone like you will understand that you have to have impact on the world, make it a better place in any area you can. That's a good thing. And I love that about you.
It, yeah, what's interesting is like, sure, we've made a lot of money or what have you, but like, what good does that do? Like, at the end of the day, you can shovel $100 bills in my grave. Like, how is that going to benefit anyone? For me, I'd much rather try to positively impact the world. And even in doing so, even if I fail and everything falls apart, I would rather have tried to do that than to never have tried at all.
Yeah, exactly. Got that. Okay, so, sorry. That's going to lead to the very first question. Are you ready, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. You see, I believe we've got so many realtors and so many folks in the real estate industries, and they've got diverse insight and knowledge as to how real estate work. But I believe they might be getting some things wrong. So I want to ask you now, can you talk to us about the one thing that every real estate expert gets wrong?
Mm. I think one of the key aspects there is around the cost of housing and the cost of constructing anything, frankly. Many people think this is just the way it has to be. But if you look at the past 60 years, other industries like manufacturing have improved labor productivity by 760%. Agriculture is 1,500%. But construction has done nothing. It's been stuck at simply 10%. And the old way of thinking, the old way of doing this is just ineffective. And there are better ways to make that happen. And so I think this is fundamentally what people get wrong in that instead of, right now, when you build a building, you bring a bunch of different contractors, different people together to build that building. But instead, for us, we ended up bringing all that work under one roof so we could consider this and make it a manufacturing process. Imagine for a moment if a construction company were to produce a car. You'd have a different company installing the wheel, a different company installing the windshield, and a different company installing the door. And then the door company would call you up and say, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I got delayed on another project and I can't get out there for 2 weeks." So you'd be shut down for those 2 weeks. A manufacturing company looks at us and says, "What are you doing?" And our simple answer is, this is the way it's always been done. There's a better way, and we can follow the manufacturing process to make that happen.
Happen. Amazing. I got that. I got that. That was well explained. Okay. So you mentioned rent reduction. I want to know, how did you do that? How is that possible? Making rent affordable. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, the key aspect is you need to drive down the costs of construction. One typical approach that people go at this is they say, "Hey, government, you should fund, these projects and then cap those rents." And that certainly works as a way to provide affordable housing into a community. But the problem is you can't scale that up. The housing sector is so large, you can't take enough money out of the rest of the economy to move it into housing to solve the problem. Instead, you need to fundamentally change the way construction is done to drive down those costs. Now, how do you actually make that happen? Well, we talked a little bit about the manufacturing process, but I'll give you another sense of it. One tip, like one revolutionary thing that we can bring into our work is the assembly line. I know it's crazy, totally cutting edge, right? But how in the world can you take a building and drive it down a line? Well, you can't. But what you can do is you can take the person and move them through the building. And so for us right now, every 5 hours, our teams shift to the building by one unit. And so every 5 hours, if you look at the end of our building, we have a brand new unit complete. And then one technique might take a project that may last 15 months and drive it down to 9.
Amazing. I got that. I got that. Okay. So, what does it take to grow a business to your size?
Mhm. It's really challenging. So today we're at about $200 million, and we've grown that from virtually nothing. And early on, like as just a new entrepreneur, you're doing everything yourself, right? Like you have to be a person of many hats, and there's challenge in that. There's a lot of late nights, a lot of painful days dealing with all these issues. It all falls on your lap. And then as you start to scale, the first thing, so you're bringing on new employees, and there's a hesitation and a fear that you're covering their salary, you're responsible for them. And then you got to make sure to inspire and get them motivated and drive in the right direction. And so there's a hurdle, a threshold there to building up that small team. But once you start getting beyond that, there's just bigger challenges. When you get to hundreds of people, thousands of people, you get to a point where employees can hide, right? Like and be not as effective, and it's not visible to you. And you need systems and processes to kind of manage this whole infrastructure. And you have to think about leadership differently. Like you have to start inspiring people to want to be and do more. You need to think about hiring the best. I'll kind of go off on a slight tangent with this, but this is the most important lesson I've ever learned about scaling up a business. And that is that you need to hire the best. And when I say the best, I truly mean the best. We'll hire employees from other states and fly them in during the week to come work here and fly them home on the weekend. In one of our employees in 2007, Steve Jobs announced the iPhone. That employee, Steve Jobs, walked off stage on this iconic announcement, right? The brand new iPhone. He walked off stage, and our employee walked on that same stage following Steve Jobs. And see, when you have people at that caliber, they change things. They unlock doors for you that you didn't even know could be unlocked. And a lot of people are afraid, especially as you get a little bit larger, you're afraid, like, I can't afford to hire the best. And it's true. They're expensive. You have to pay top of market salaries, top of market wages to get them. But what most leaders fail to understand is that the best people outperform the average by 2 to 5 to 10 times as much. And so instead of looking at it as a cost per person, you should look at it as a cost per unit produced. And from that perspective, the best people aren't your most expensive. They're actually a bargain, and they're your least expensive, and you can't afford not to have them.
You can't afford not to have them. I got that. Okay, let us talk about the Federal Reserve interest rate. How does it affect real estate development?
Yeah, it's interesting right now because we're not. Housing in America is tough, right? It's expensive. We're not developing enough for our communities. And with the rise in interest rates that have happened over the past year, that has caused a substantial decline in the number of new building housing apartments that have come on or that are being constructed. Now, you might look and say, well, I still see cranes up. I see still buildings getting built kind of everywhere right now. The problem is that those were all started before the rate hike. And so you get this backlog of buildings that are still coming online. This provides a lot of supply that keeps prices in a decent spot right now. But with the starts falling off a cliff, that means supply will also fall off a cliff over the next months and years. And once supply declines like that, we're expecting rental rates to start climbing. And so you want to be thoughtful and want to protect yourself. And there's ways you can do that. For example, just locking in a longer term lease right now to ensure that you kind of protect yourself from potential rate increases.
Got that too. You know, it's amazing because I mentioned it in the beginning that I am convinced I'm definitely going to learn one or two things from you. And that has happened already, I tell you.
Mm.
Okay, Mike, to bring this to an end, what would you like to leave the audience with? Like a final thought.
I'll give you
And,
one kind of other valuable lesson I've learned, and that is that whenever you start something new, you're terrible at it, and that's okay, right? As a kid, we are not good at anything, but it doesn't bother us, right? Like we can't walk, we can't talk, we can't ride a bike, but like we're excited to take on new challenges, explore new things, and there's no negative stigma around that learning process. But as we get older, there's a hesitation inside of us. We start to feel like if we're gonna try something, we better be good at it. Otherwise, people are gonna look at us negatively about doing that thing. But my encouragement to you is to get out there, try, fail, try again. It's the people who get into the weeds and try to make something happen. They're the ones who ultimately become the most successful in life.
powerful. I got that. Now, for people who would like to reach out to you and even learn more about what you're doing, or maybe you even said some things that resonated with them and they'd love to learn more, how can that be possible?
Yeah, the best way is to visit our website. That's norhart.com, norhart.com. And one fun thing there is that we've got an investment opportunity there where people can actually invest and earn money at a pretty consistent rate of return. It's a really kind of a neat product that's on that website as well.
Oh, amazing. I love that. So that's going to be the end of the show, Mike. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing this powerful insight with us. It means a whole lot, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was